Chris Dallas is originally from Greece. He owns Harvestime grocery store on Lawrence Avenue in Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
How long have you been living in Chicago?
Came to Chicago in 1977, so about 40 years.
How difficult is your job?
My job is probably as difficult as anybody else's. It's just very involved. A lot of small details that are constantly happening.
Maybe you like your job too much and you cannot even feel how difficult it is.
That's what my wife says. It is difficult. It's as difficult as any because you deal with public, you deal with products, you deal with perishable products that need to be taken care of, and you deal with a lot of good customers. So there's one, it never feels like it's work if they enjoy what they're doing. So I guess I enjoy it a lot.
Why did you choose this particular business?
This was by default. Before my brothers and I that owned this, I'm not a sole owner, we owned restaurants. And we decided restaurants was not something that we wanted to do.
Here in Greece or
in Chicago? Here in Chicago. We had friends that were in the business and they kind of mentored us and helped us along, and we found a place and we just basically decided that was a good business to be in. Food is something we all have and we always need to find.
And the restaurant is also, focused on food.
Definitely focused on food, and definitely the two were related. We obviously knew one business, but it was an easy transition from selling prepared foods to packaged foods as a grocery store would be.
Is it fair to say that a lot of Greek people in Chicago are involved in the restaurant business and in the grocery stores business?
It is very fair to say that, although the numbers have changed quite a bit. It used to be that every corner would have a Greek hot dog stand in it. Yeah. It's no longer the case. You don't have that many hot dog stands. Now you have, it seems like every block has a grocery store, and good chances are they're going to be either a Greek family or an Italian family that owns
That's what
it.
I'm saying, because I personally know many Greek families. It's like a family business that they own grocery stores all over Chicagoland.
Mm-hmm. And it was, again, a transition from restaurants to groceries.
Yeah.
It is the nature of every ethnicity that comes to an area. You follow the business that was there. You live in the neighborhood that the people before you that you knew came in, much like the Bulgarian community. They came into Chicago. They came pretty much in the area where my grocery store was in.
Yeah.
They found what they wanted. They found each other, and then they created a community around there. Mm-hmm. But as soon as they got a little bit assimilated, they moved out. They went where their sought-after jobs were.
A lot of Bulgarians still living there.
There are always going to be people that live in different areas, but usually people go where their jobs or their churches are nearby.
I'm a Bulgarian myself. I know that you played a very vital role for the Bulgarian community. You were basically the first grocery store that welcomed them on the north side of Chicago, where they primarily were residing.
Again, if you own any business, you owe it to your own business to adapt to who the customers are. Mm-hmm. So if you have people coming in that are asking, for example, for Lutenica, never heard the name before, I had to find out what it was.
Can you tell our viewers what Lutenica means?
I think most of your viewers will probably know at least 5 recipes as to how to make it.
Okay.
It's a tomato and pepper dip that it's not cooked, it's fresh, and it's a delicious thing to put on any meals. It's a very traditional Bulgarian dish, but until a customer asked me about it, I had no idea what it was.
You have a Greek descent and you're a first generation American, is that right?
I am a direct import, so I'm not a first generation is somebody who's born here. So my kids will be first generation.
Yeah, I meant that you were not born here.
I was not born here, so I'm an
You were born in Greece.
Correct.
But you're a member of the Greek community in Chicagoland.
Absolutely.
Can you tell our viewers anything about this great community?
Chicago community, it's actually huge. It's
the Greek community.
The Greek Chicago community. It started many, many years ago. Actually, one of the reasons, at least that's what the stories tell us, as to why Greeks started in restaurants in Chicago, is that they worked in building the L tracks, the railroad system in Chicago.
Okay.
They were immigrants. They lived probably 10 to a room, and it was a
10 people in a room.
or an apartment. It wasn't what it is now.
Okay.
So you had, and it was typically all male, because Greeks would come from Greece, stay in the United States for a while until they made a little bit of money, then go back to Greece. But what they had is a system that whenever one of them had a day off, he was responsible to cook for the rest of them. So when the railroad was done, they all knew how to cook. So it was the only other thing that they had. So they went out and opened little restaurants, and they started out in the restaurant business. Now, whether that's true or not, I've heard that story many times. So I guess if you repeat it enough, it becomes truthful.
Do you have any idea how many Greek people live in Chicago?
The estimate is around 500,000.
500,000.
But they're all spread out. A lot of them in northwest suburbs, a lot of them in the city itself, a lot in the southwest side. Typically, you'll find a Greek community around a Greek church.
If I'm not mistaken, there is a Taste of Greece coming up soon.
There's a Taste of Greece. Anytime there's a church, they have a picnic, which is typically a Taste of Greece.
It's not like a one event, it's like a bunch of
Well, you have the Greek town, what is called the Greek town, which is on Halsted Street. Next to downtown, you have a bunch of Greek restaurants that are still there. They organize what they call a Taste of Greece.
Okay.
So you'll find a lot more organized there than a church picnic.
You serve several communities in your store besides the Bulgarian community. Who are your customers there?
That's probably the most difficult answer that I can give you. And the reason for that is that our customers are diverse as the neighborhood that we live in. And being in a store, in a retail store, I try to cater to everybody that walks in my door. Obviously, we have a lot of Greeks that come in the store. It was an old Greek neighborhood that we opened in. There was, before the Greeks, there were Latinos living in the neighborhood, but not necessarily Mexican.
Okay.
So you have the Latino community, where, when it comes to food at least, is very diverse, because you have Mexican, which is most of the Latinos, then you have Peruvians, Guatemalans, Ecuadorians, Salvadorians.
I've heard you speak Spanish in your store, and I was amazed. How did it happen that you learned Spanish?
Again, when I came in, I was a young boy. I was 14 years old. The only sport that I knew how to play was what we call football, what's called here soccer.
Soccer, yeah.
American kids did not know what soccer was at that point. The only kids that I could play soccer with were Mexican.
Okay.
In order to communicate with them, I had to learn Spanish.
Wow.
And that's how I started learning, and of course...
So the first words were sports related, I guess.
Yeah, it was pass the ball, pasa la pelota.
Okay.
So...
How is a team in Spanish?
Equipo.
Equipo. Okay, very good.
I'm almost as good as Hristo Stoichkov.
All right. Yeah, the famous Bulgarian soccer player. What is the recipe for a successful grocery store?
It could be the same recipe for any business.
Okay.
Treat your customers with respect. Treat the product you sell. It has to be the best there is. And it's a very typical thing, and you can ask anybody who's worked with me to tell, hire people. I tell them that do everything right and don't worry about money. If you worry about money, business is not going to succeed.
So money will follow if you love what you're doing and if you're capable in what you're doing.
You have to balance everything.
Yeah.
You have to always provide a great deal, and a good deal is not something really cheap. The deal is a good product at a fair price.
In terms of food, because you're offering mainly food, it means that you're trying to offer good, wholesome food at a good competitive price.
Absolutely. If food is not wholesome, you're not going to see it in my store. There's a very basic rule simple rule. If I don't eat it, I'm not going to sell it.
You have installed solar panels on the roof of your store. Whose idea was that?
That was my idea, and that's actually a solar panel awning that hangs in front of my store.
Yeah, do you regret it?
Absolutely not. Not for a second.
Why did you do that?
It goes along with the ideal, and my ideals personally, when it comes to what we should be all doing and looking forward towards our environment.
Okay.
Every little drop helps. The panels have been up for 4 years. The savings in electricity are not huge, but not in proportion to what my electrical bill is.
So you view that as your personal and your store's personal contribution towards like the saving the environment, you know?
That is the least that I could do. Besides that, I mean, if you've been in my store, every light that we've changed in the store is changed into LED before it became fashionable, before actually the lights were cheap enough to have. We made a huge investment in changing that. We have very high efficiency compressors to run our refrigerators. And those are small things that we don't necessarily need a pat in the back. But as far as the awning is concerned, it is also a visual reminder for anybody that's in my store as to what my store stands for.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I could easily hang it up on the roof.
It's a visual message. Visual message.
Absolutely.
Greece is constantly in the news recently. Life seems to be difficult for the ordinary citizens there. What is your take on that?
It is, and I don't think we have enough time to discuss this at the show, or any show
Like in
this matter.
the shortest way possible.
It is something that I'm not going to say it's unfair, although the solutions that are sought after have been unfair. A lot of people have borrowed their way to a good lifestyle, and they didn't have money to pay for it when the lifestyle ended. The problem is that instead of figuring out ways to repay it, they continued borrowing in order to repay for it.
Will you ever invest in Greece?
I would, but not at this point.
Well, once in your story you told me that you'll never invest in Greece and that it's not reasonable to invest in Greece.
Again, not at this point. And I would say it will be very difficult if the mindset of my countrymen does not change.
What are your most important principles in life and in business?
Trying to be a good person. That's about the only thing that I can control. And if I control that, the rest of it doesn't really matter.
Do you think America is on the right path right now?
I don't think America knows what path we're in right now. And that is a problem that I have and I struggle with, especially with the elections going on right now. We're more divided right now than we've ever been as long as I've been here.
You're not convinced that Trump or Hillary can make things better for the middle class in America?
I don't think the president themselves, any president,
Has
in the
power.
system that we have, has the power to do what they claim they could do.
They can be the leaders.
They could be the leaders, they could set the tone, but they have to also be politically savvy to be able to make the changes that are required.
We're living in Chicago, and our city and the state of Illinois seem to be deeply in the red. Are you worried about the future of the city and of the state in general?
Of course I am. I pay my taxes both to the city and to the state, and it is difficult to see stalemates where there's no progress any whatsoever. And we have this at this point both at the state level and the federal level where nothing really gets done. The city seems to be trying to get things done, only that their focus seems to be a little bit more confused than anything else. Taxes are something that you always hear that they're always going to, there's always this cloud over your head that the taxes are going to get higher. If the taxes get higher, then obviously the prices get higher, the city gets more expensive, more people leave the city. And it is not a pleasant place to be or to feel that you're being in. Now, are there remedies for that? Perhaps there are. I'm not exactly that connected to absolutely everything to offer solutions.
How important are the immigrants residing in Chicago for overcoming those challenges?
Immigrants have always been important both to Chicago. The United States in general has been built by immigrants and has continued to be built by immigrants. That's why I have a hard time understanding why immigration policy is not a core of the American politics.
Yeah.
It's easy to say that I don't like X, Y, Z, and therefore they shouldn't come in. And
this particular group of immigrants are troublemakers and not good people and stuff
I have
like that.
dealt with immigrants all my life. I'm an immigrant myself. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I believe that you're not here to cause trouble. And
Yeah.
you know, I have Mexican employees that came here as young kids and have families with kids, and they're not here to cause trouble. So
They're
I have
nice
no
people.
idea where this fear comes from.
And one last question, because we were talking about Hillary and Trump, but let's imagine you're the president. What would you change in the American society for the good of the people in the middle class of America?
I believe that the only thing that we need to change is education, where education becomes mandatory and it becomes a good thing for everybody. I have two boys
And
that
affordable.
it has to be affordable, otherwise it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It has
So
to
you
be,
believe that if we improve the education and we have all young people attending schools and basically educating them, that the violence, crime, and a lot of problems would be resolved only by doing this?
education is much more complicated than simply opening schools and having students sit in a chair. Education is important to teach what people need to learn, not only what they want to learn. I might want to learn about international policy, but I can't get out of my neighborhood. If I can't earn a living, what interest would I have, or how could I affect international policy? We have schools that when I came to the United States, I was in vocational school in Greece. I was learning how to become a machinist. When I came here, I went to a school that offered music and art and things that I never thought in my life I would actually be exposed to coming from Greece. Now, of course, it was mandatory that I had to take both art and music. But the things that I had learned as a kid in Greece, the learning a trade, learning how to use my hands, learning how to use my skills in putting things together, was never taught. So then I find out that there were schools in Chicago that offered wood shop or metal shop or things that people can actually use to earn a living after even high school, if they get out of high school. They took all those out to replace them with some theoretical stuff. Not every educational product has to be theory.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you
Great to
again.
have you here.
My pleasure.